All right, hi guys. Sorry about the video last night. I don't know if it's my internet or my computer. Kaltura has always been kind of funny for me, but it took like 2 hours to upload the video, and then it uploaded weird and garbled. So I'm not going to re-record everything. I'm going to try to keep it brief today because I'm hiding from my daughter who's in the other room and wants me to hold her so she can pull my hair. Anyway, we are in Sidman chapter 4 and 5 this week. Chapter 4 is all about whether or not punishment is effective. And the main takeaways of the chapter are that it is effective short term, but we recover from it. And it's not always effective for everybody. And what can be punishing can also be conditioned to be reinforcing. So let's unpack that. And there's also the ethical implications too that weren't as directly addressed, but they're obviously a concern. So let's kind of unpack that. What does it mean by punishment only being effective short term and recovering from it? Well, Sidman gave the example of a pigeon that was shocked every time it wanted to eat. However, eating is so reinforcing that the pigeon would just persevere through the shocks to get to the food. So anytime we're administering a punishment, we have to make sure that it's as powerful, if not more powerful, than the reinforcer driving the behavior, right? And who decides what behavior is to be punished? Typically us as a society. And most of the behaviors we punish are things that are destructive to others. And so we try to short-term, stop them as quickly as we can. However, let's just look at, to really determine how effective punishment is, let's look at things that are naturally punishing. So I give the example of getting food poisoning, which is a natural punisher to keep us from eating things that are bad for us, right? Well, I give the example of when I was younger, I got food poisoning from pizza, and I didn't want to eat pizza for a good several months. It really grossed me out. And then I recovered from that because we can recover from punishment, and now I love pizza. I would eat pizza every day. So it was only a short-term punisher for me until I recovered. So the other thing too, but beyond recovery, is just how do we make something so punishing that we will never want to do it again, or so punishing that if other people see us be punished, they will want to be punished like we have. And that really comes down to an ethical thing. Back in the ancient times, and maybe not even so ancient times, there was very harsh physical punishment. Sidman talks about Hammurabi's code, where an eye for an eye, essentially. If you steal something, you lose your hand. Fortunately, most places don't ascribe by that anymore, but we still have to consider that not all punishment works for the long term unless it's ethically questionable, perhaps. And even then, even things such as shocks can be conditioned to either be neutral or reinforcers. So how does that happen? Well, a punisher can be reinforced to be almost or it can be conditioned to be a reinforcer if the punishment precedes a reinforcing activity. So just as the pigeon wore a shock collar every time it needed to eat, the shock sort of started becoming neutral because it knew I'm eating right now, so it's worth it. I kind of think of the example of a tattoo. So you would think getting jabbed by a needle is really punishing and aversive, and people aren't going to want to do it, right? Well, it almost becomes, people will say that they get addicted to the process because of the outcome of the tattoo. You have a beautiful work of art afterwards. So people will submit themselves to punishing things if they find that they're going to get an outcome that is more reinforcing than the punishing element is aversive. As we move into chapter 5, the other thing we're starting to look at is both chapters actually go really well hand in hand. So what we're looking at is when people, talking a little bit more about maybe it's the fact that some people don't even find things punishing in the first place. There are some outliers that used to be called taboo, and now a lot of those things are less taboo because we start to associate that aversive stimuli or that punishing stimuli with something more reinforcing because it has a more reinforcing outcome. And Sidman talks a lot about too with our laws, how they're built. They're really built off of emotional driving forces. So if somebody wrongs us, we want to get even, we want justice. And if we look at the raw data, there's not a lot to substantiate whether or not punishment really truly works on a legal basis, because we still have a lot of illegal activity going on. So either we need to redefine illegal activity, or we need to rethink how we address it. So going into chapter 5 on becoming the shock, we're really thinking about how else can we address behavior that needs to be modified, but also how do we not accidentally create new punishers? And that's another big issue. So Sidman gave the example of a school where a kid that maybe has some challenging behavior that does need to be addressed has it addressed in the wrong way repeatedly, and suddenly school, which should not be a punishing place, becomes a punisher in and of itself. I had thought of the idea of maybe going to the doctors, where going to the doctors should be reinforcing, it's helping you, you're getting healthier, and a lot of times they're giving you something to feel better. However, after so many times of getting a shot, I'm gonna have to wrap it up. Obviously somebody's mad. After so many times of having to get shots or tests done or whatnot, going to the doctor can be punishing for a lot of people as well. And so we kind of create these environments that should either be positive, like reinforcing, or neutral, and we turn them into conditioned punishers. So from these two chapters, we kind of have to think of how do we deal with punishment when we know we can recover. So we know it's not a long-term solution. Some experiences are not punishing to everybody. Some punishers can be conditioned to be reinforcing, and some punishers can condition neutral or reinforcing environments to be punishers. So we have a lot to think about here. I did expand on it more in my first video. I know a lot of it was hard to watch, but not all of it was. Anyway, my question for you guys is, can you think of a time that something that should have maybe been a natural punisher became a conditioned reinforcer for you? And then for the next chapter, can you think of how can we address behavior, say for example in schools, where the punishment given to correct the behavior actually made the environment punisher too?